What's up everyone, Liz here. Today let's talk about how to compare pie charts. Let's look at the question first. The charts below show the average percentages in typical meals of 3 types of nutrients, all of which may be unhealthy if eaten too much. Let's start with the introductory paragraph. I will show you a super useful paraphrasing technique. So the original uses in typical meals. The percentages of nutrients in typical meals. We can instead use by meal. The charts show the average consumption of sodium, saturated fats, and added sugars by meal. Here, by means according to. The first chart shows sodium consumption by meal. The second shows saturated fat consumption by meal. The third chart shows added sugar consumption by meal. And be careful that it should be by meal, not by meals. Now, I will show you a few more examples to help you understand the use of by meal. This graph shows Americans by income. It divides Americans into different income groups. This is global energy consumption by region. And this is electricity production by country. Now, let's finish the introductory paragraph. Let's add this part. All 3 types of nutrients may be harmful to health if overconsumed. Now, let's move on to the overview paragraph. In this paragraph, we report the most important features of the charts. And remember that for pie charts, bigger slices are always more important than smaller ones because bigger slices are much more noticeable. I mean, when you look at a pie chart, you will first notice bigger slices, not smaller ones, won't you? So in the overview, we report the biggest slices and we don't need to mention the smallest slices. Overall, while the intake of sodium and saturated fat is higher at dinner than at any other meal, added sugar is eaten most in snacks. So for this part, you could also say that the intake of sodium and saturated fat is highest at dinner. Note that I use the highest and the most, not the highest and the most. So we tend to use highest without the definite article when we are comparing something with itself in different circumstances. That is to say, we don't use the definite article when we are comparing the same thing. For example, we say he's the happiest person in the world. Here, the definite article is necessary because he is comparing himself to other people. Compared to other people, he is the happiest person in the world. But we say he's happiest when he's alone. The definite article is not needed here because he is comparing himself to himself. He's comparing the same thing, which is himself. He's happiest when he's alone than when he's with other people. He isn't comparing himself to other people. He's comparing himself to himself. In the overview, I'm comparing sodium intake to sodium intake. I'm comparing the same thing, which is sodium intake. I'm comparing sodium intake at dinner to sodium intake at other meals. That's why I use the highest and not the highest. Here's another example. This graph shows the percentage of Australian men and women in different age groups who did regular physical activity. When reporting this number, we can say that women's participation was highest in the 45 to 54 age group. The definite article is not needed because here we are comparing the same thing, which is women's participation. We are comparing women's participation in the 45 to 54 age group to women's participation in the other age groups. Now, the overview paragraph is done. Let's move on to details paragraphs. I will group these 2 charts into details paragraph 1 because they share some similarities. Dinner and lunch are the 2 biggest categories in both of the charts. In details paragraph 2, I will describe this chart because it's different. The biggest category in this chart is snacks instead of dinner. Let's start with details paragraph 1. Grouping the first two charts into the same paragraph doesn't mean we should describe them at the same time. Going back and forth between sodium and saturated fats will only make your essay hard to read. Your essay, your comparisons will be much more clear if you describe the first two charts one at a time. So, when you describe the first chart, you simply describe it. You simply say that dinner is the biggest category, lunch is the second biggest, and these two numbers are the same. That's it. However, when you describe the second chart, you need to show how it is different from or similar to the first chart. Let's do the first chart first. We want to say that these are the two biggest categories. Let's see how we expressed it in the overview paragraph. We said that the intake of sodium and the saturated fat is higher at dinner than at any other meal. So we use the higher. Remember that I mentioned we can also use the highest without the definite article? Sodium consumption is highest at dinner and the second highest at lunch. Now I will add the numbers, making up 43 and 29% of total sodium consumption respectively. Now let's report these two numbers. Let's say they are the same. The proportions of this type of nutrients taken in at snack time and breakfast are the same, both at 14%. Now, when describing the second chart, how can we compare it with the first chart? We can use signposting words. When showing similarities, we can use words like also. And when showing differences, we can use words like however. For example, like the first chart, dinner and lunch are also the biggest categories in the second chart. We can use also to show this similarity. Dinner and lunch also account for the largest and the second largest proportions of total saturated fat intake, respectively, at 37 and 26%. Now I'm going to report the difference. I will use however. However, a greater proportion is eaten at snack time than at breakfast at 21 and 16% respectively. This paragraph is done. Please note that the first time I added the data, I was very specific. If I had simply said at 43 and 29% respectively, readers wouldn't have known 43 and 29% of what. That's why you need to be very specific here. 43 and 29% of total sodium consumption. After you've established the context, you can just say at a certain percentage. Now, when describing the third chart, we do the same thing. We show how this chart is similar to and different from the first two charts. I think the biggest difference is reflected in dinner. Here, dinner isn't the biggest category. I will use compared with to introduce this difference. Compared with the other two nutrients, added sugar has a relatively low consumption level at dinner at 23%. Now I'm going to continue to talk about the difference. It is snacks that are the greatest source of sugar intake at 42%. Now the similarity. However, like the other nutrients, it is also consumed the least at breakfast at only 16%. Apart from also, we can use like to introduce a similarity. This paragraph is also done. As you can see, I didn't mention lunch. We don't need to report every single piece of data. I don't think in the last chart there is anything interesting about lunch, so I ignored it. Here's the entire essay. Here are some key takeaways. No matter what type of chart you get, there are always several biggest categories to report. Here are 4 different ways I used to describe the biggest categories. Use the comparative is higher at dinner than at any other meal. Use the superlative is eaten most in snacks, is highest at dinner, is consumed the least at breakfast. Use account for the largest proportion of the total. Use greatest source. Snacks are the greatest source of sugar intake. Secondly, don't report 2 charts at the same time. Instead, describe them one at a time. Thirdly, reporting charts one by one doesn't mean we don't compare them. We still compare them, And you can use also or like to show similarities, and use however, compared with, or unlike to show differences. That's all for this video. You may be also interested in Task 2 questions. Here's one on discuss both views. Go ahead and check it out. Thanks for watching. Bye!